Welcome back to the April 2012 edition of Artist Review. We've gone through my birthday month at a rapid-fire rate, as it always does. I guess it's age, not really the month. We're looking forward here in New Orleans to the up-and-coming weekend for the first weekend of Jazz Fest. All of you out there know about it. Hopefully everyone who's watching the show knows about it, because right now it's so internationally known and so huge that we really don't have to mention it here, other than to say it's starting again, folks. So get ready, because it brings a lot of folks here. All of our restaurants, for our restaurant watchers and eaters, you'll have trouble getting in those restaurants. Everything is crowded. So everything is doing wonders for our tourism and for our financial economy. Plus, we're rewarding everyone with great weather and magnificent music, art, crafts, etc. So enjoy your Jazz Fest. But let's go on. Well, as you know, at the end of each month, we bring on an artist live to you, and he or she presents approximately 14 pieces of his skill to your audience. So what we're going to do without further announcement is to introduce, today we're fortunate to have a photographer, because as you know who follow the show religiously, we usually can only get like one, sometimes no photographers in the entire year. And this is really interesting because this gentleman's wife is also a photographer, and we're hoping to have her on later on during the year. So that would be 2 or 3. We might have had one earlier this season. But it's rare for us to get, and photography has really come into its own, I would think, in the last 10 years. Before, it was really not a recognized art as much as it should be, but I've always followed it, and I'm glad to share it with you. So let's go ahead and meet Charlie Oliphant, and he, as I said, a photographer. Welcome to the show, Charlie.
Thank you, Bob. Good to be here.
Great. Appreciate you coming in on this. And he's visibly attired in the Jazz Fest landmark shirts that we all recognize, I imagine. And let's start about right at the beginning. We always ask, no matter what show, is whether you're a native or not. I know the answer, but you tell us.
I'm not from here. I moved here 4 years ago with my wife, Andy.
Okay.
We had come here before Katrina and visited then. And then we came back Christmas 5 years ago. And it was then we decided to move here. So it's been almost 4 years we've lived here now.
Great. And folks, we lured him away, I'm not sure directly, but from a big top-notch city like San Francisco. So you know that's a great testimony, because usually we have all those folks say, well, you know, I'm going to the big city and I'm not staying here anymore. We're going to someplace really nice. But he feels we're just as nice, if not nicer, than SF. And some of the other cities, they both lived around the world. So they've had a taste, and so far they're committed to staying with us. So that's really great. Tell us a little bit, Charlie, about how you first got interested in photography.
Well, when I was a kid, I always loved photography, and I loved seeing the work of photographers. I would go camping in Yosemite, and at the bottom of the valley there, you would see Ansel Adams driving around in his station wagon, and he would have a stack of 50 or so photographs that he would sell you for $50.
Wow.
And when I saw his stuff, I said, wow, I want to be a photographer. This stuff is gorgeous. This is really cool. Then as I got older, let
me just interrupt for 1 second, because in case anyone doesn't know who he's speaking, of whom he speaks, Ansel Adams is, I don't think he did anything other than B&W, black and white, but magnificent mountainscapes, I would call it. I guess his landscape is technically correct, but of all the in the West, all the, whether it's snow-capped, non-snow-capped, just magnificent nature, and became really the perennial favorite of so many folks. And as everyone started with a humble background, as you said, I hadn't even heard that this gentleman was fortunate enough to see him in the early days, and wouldn't it be nice to have been able to collect something then when it was affordable? But go ahead, tell us some more, please.
Yeah, I wished I had the $50 as a kid to be able to buy his work, but that was a lot of money when I was a kid.
A lot of money back then.
But I knew when I saw his photographs they were great, and then shortly after he became very, very widely known and popular. And I'd see him in magazines, and I just loved his stuff. Then later, as I got older, I went to go see a lot of music shows and saw lots of bands, and one of the photographers that caught my eye was a guy named Jim Marshall, who was a rather famous photographer, taking some of the most famous pictures of Jimi Hendrix and a lot of other bands. And he later on became a friend of mine, and he was like a mentor to me. And so between Jim Marshall and Ansel Adams, I knew that making photographs was what I really wanted to do.
Great. Okay, and of course, wherever you've traveled, you've plied your trade, so to speak, right?
Right. Well, actually, the first time I shot anything significant was when I was a kid. I think I was 8 years old. I shot a band called the Banana Splits live in Hawaii on Super 8 film. That was my first music video. And I always loved that genre of videos, and ended up doing going to TV school twice, going to film school once, and ended up doing videos for a lot of the popular bands, including the band Journey from San Francisco. I did all their videos for about 9 years.
Fantastic.
And then once we moved to New Orleans, I decided, look, the only thing I want to do is take stills, so I don't even make videos anymore. I just take stills.
Well, yeah, I think it's always good to come to what your specialty, your focus is. But not that you might not do as well, but I mean, I think after a while, it's just always better to just focus on your mainstay program and do the best you can there. And I think you made the right decision. Now let's talk a little bit about where people can see you, because I know you do have some things locally. Let's start first of all with if you missed this show or you want to see more than we'll be seeing on this show, or someone else you want to tell about. I know you have a website. Why don't you go ahead and tell them? I know our director is going to go ahead and put up that website address for you. So why don't you give that to the folks, and that way hopefully he'll be flashing that on the screen while we're talking.
Great. Yeah, it's oliphantimages.com, our last name, OLIPHANT, images.com. We have 4 galleries up there now. We just added some new stuff from the tall ships sailing up the Mississippi River in New Orleans. Got some wonderful photographs there. Then we also have a series of photographs down at New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park in the French Market.
So if people want to go see you, in the flesh, it's at, where is this now again? Because I know I made the mistake of thinking you were talking about that small jazz park on Bourbon Street, but I didn't remember ever seeing any type of art around there. So for those who really want to go ahead down in the quarter, especially whether they're tourists or not, tell them exactly where that outside gallery is.
Yes, it's in Dutch Alley on North Peters Street, just one block up from Cafe Du Monde, and New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park. And they have live performances there, as well as an exhibition of our photographs, mine and my wife's. And that gets updated every 6 months, but you'll recognize a lot of the people there, like Kermit Ruffins, Irma Thomas, Walter Wolfman Washington. Many of the local artists are presented there through our photography, and we're very proud of that.
Well, that would be great. With our weather right now, of course, it'll be hard if you're not going to Jazz Fest. Well, maybe it might not be so bad if you go during the day while everyone's at the Jazz Fest. That might be the time this weekend to take a stroll. And for those who are not familiar, if you just go around the corner from Cafe Du Monde, it's really the space beyond the market and the wall, the levee wall, that you eventually go down and you can actually go over the wall. And there's a restaurant, used to be Bella not Bella Done, I've forgotten, but it's now Galvez, a Spanish restaurant. It's very well done. So that whole area has become a great little stroll place with different arts and crafts and photography. So what a great time to go, because the weather is just magnificent. All right, well, that's good. So you can see him on the website named after OliphantImages.com. You can see he and his wife, who hopefully will, like I say, show on us later on. If not, you'll get an advanced peek at some of the stuff that she does. But now let's go in. Now, what's interesting today is of the pieces that he's brought us, all are almost if not identical in size and matting and framing. So we won't spend time on each piece discussing that, whereas a lot of the painters, etc., will either hand make some frames or have rationale as to why they chose that particular frame, those mats, etc. We're going to have a kind of a cookie cutter prototype that we'll talk about in the first photograph, and then unless something needs to be explained, we probably won't repeat that. But let's go ahead and bring up our first subject, and why don't you tell us, this is something that I think a lot of us will recognize, but maybe, is this what we're thinking of, folks? We know it's Mr. Tiger, but is it the tiger that so many of us in the city recognize? I'm not so sure. But look how magnificent as the director pans back. Tell us about this tiger and what interested you besides his sheer magnificence that you wanted to incorporate in this photo.
This is one of the first photographs I took when we moved to New Orleans. This is none other than Rex at the Audubon Zoo. What's amazing about this was I got him to look directly at the camera when I snapped the shot, and if you look at him, you can see he's looking right at you. He is one magnificent, beautiful beast. That's an incredible zoo, and he's absolutely one of my favorites, and actually this is one of my more popular photographs.
Absolutely beautiful. Now, as you notice, let's talk about the framing and the matting on this one, so that way we know what happens on the rest. So go ahead, why don't you tell us, we've got a single white mat? Talk about that, please.
Yeah, it's a single white mat. This is printed on museum-quality, acid-free paper. So
very good.
So it's fine art. These are images that will last probably longer than I will.
And you mentioned it's not glass; it's some type of lucite. What do we have?
Right, it's
protected.
It's just plastic. And these are not highly expensive frames that I keep these in. You can probably get something similar at your local stores. Even Walmart, you can probably have something like that. But they do the job, and they display them well, and they don't interfere with the subject matter. And they just like to keep it simple so you can focus on what we took the picture of.
Yeah. As I mentioned, he and his wife, and perhaps anyone out there who might be interested in this photo, a simple change of that color on the black frame might make it highly collectible here in our entire state. So even though it's not necessarily the same animal that we're familiar with that lives up the river, it is certainly one of the prettiest pictures in close-up. To think you could get that close, even in the zoo, is magnificent, because it really looks like he's just breathing right down your breath. A good friend of mine, if you're watching the show, is an animal custodian at Audubon Park right now. She's doing at the zoo. She's doing she wants to get to the elephants. She's just transplanted here from New York, and she started with the cats, but I'm not sure if it's the tigers or not. I've forgotten all that. I think it might be all of them. And also she does the rhinos one day, but she's working and the zebra. She's working her way to the elephants. That's her specialty. But I know she would just really enjoy this photo, because it's so realistic, and it really probably is something that she sees much better than we do on a close-up basis. That's how great this looks. Can you give us the size of the photo? Because again, we're going to go ahead and tell them what framed and without the frame.
Yeah, it's 20 by 24 inches, and
that's in the frame or the photo itself.
That's in the frame, 20 by 24.
Okay. Right.
The image itself is probably closer to 16 by 20. But
do you, when you market your photos, do you sell them both ways, the framed and unframed, or is it strictly
no, we sell them both ways.
Okay.
I'm glad to sell them either way. Some people just like the prints.
Right.
One of the first prints we sold was actually to a member of the Hawaiian royal family, and he just wanted the prints, so we put it in a cardboard tube and mailed off to him. He was ecstatic.
So if someone wanted to customize this to represent their well-known alma mater, you'd be able to do that for them.
Absolutely. We could make them a little bit more purple and gold if they wanted.
There you go. I didn't want to give it away. I was giving a little secret there. I don't think anyone guessed. All right. Well, we started off with the mighty king of the jungle, I think. I don't know. The lion, I guess, is the king of the jungle. That's anyway.
He looks like a king to me, and Rex is king.
He definitely is called king, so he can't get better than that. Now let's move on to another subject, because we're not just going to be dealing with animals today. We've got a lot of diversity, but also there's some constant themes here. Let's take a look at the next photo.
Okay. This was actually a block away from where we live in the Garden District. This is a passion flower, and the flower itself, it blooms about the size of an orange, but the intricacy and the detail of the way it's formed just really struck me and really blew my mind. I had seen these flowers when I was a kid growing up in an old house in the San Francisco Bay Area, but when I saw it here, I'd never seen one with this much detail before, and I was just blown away by it.
Yeah, as I mentioned to Charlie when I first took a look at it, one is I had never heard of the passion flower per se. I've heard of the passion fruit and eaten that many times. So that's how dumb I am about herbology or whatever. And but the as he mentioned that word, there's no better word to describe it than the intricacy. I mean, I compared it to a tapestry, almost like a hand-woven tapestry. It's just magnificent. The layers, and not only the layers of color, but also the phenomenal designs. And the you've got like a tripod spoke in the center field underneath it. Then magnificent lavender shoots with rays, the sun rays, like circling the whole situation, and then something which I can't see in between the lavender. I guess it might be the leaves or maybe still part of the flower. But once again, just a magnificent piece that would be showing, whether it's in your home or your office, to really, I love, some people don't like flower photos, but I tried my hand. I'm no photographer at all, but my little ones I did, I relished myself, but nothing in, they're few and far between compared to what we're looking at now. Once again, let's talk about the size, because this is a horizontal more than a vertical, but it is the same size. What is that again?
Yeah, it's a 16 by 20. It might be, this is actually more of a square print, so it's actually closer to a 16 by 16.
Okay. Once again, a similar white mat, black frame, and the a plastic applied to the front to keep it clean and healthy. So this, like I say, would be a welcome addition anywhere, whether it's professionally or personally. And if you love flowers, what better way? I mean, I can't grow a flower for anything. That's why I have one room. It's fortunately I collect art, and it's nothing but flowers. It's wall to ceiling, of course. People don't like. Some people, friends of mine, don't like that at all because they think I'm a hoarder. But I just, I just love it. I mean, it's just so refreshing to be in there, to have all those beautiful, magnificent versions of different flowers surrounding. In fact, it's my bedroom. So when I wake up, it is just so nice. It's almost like being in a garden, without having a garden.
Nice. Okay,
let's go on. So we've got two subjects: we've animal, which is close, and also flowers, close to a lot of people's heart. Let's see what we've got now. What we're coming up with on the next situation.
Well, this is another one of New Orleans' own treasures.
Now we're really getting to local icons here in the city.
This is a gentleman I used to play on the radio when I was a disc jockey.
But where was that? That wasn't here.
No, I was a disc jockey out in California, and then also in Germany, and for a while up in Michigan. This is Clarence Frogman Henry, who's famous for a lot of songs. Most importantly, "Ain't Got a Home," also known as "See You Later, Alligator" in Wild Crocodile. I had seen Clarence on a documentary on television shortly after we moved to New Orleans.
Right. As I was going to say, I didn't know whether you had seen it. They had done, not so recently, but post-Katrina, a documentary on him. Go ahead, please.
And so I just got a crazy idea. I said, I wonder if he's in the phone book.
Oh, there you go.
And he was. I called up the number. There was an answering machine, said, if I don't pick up, call me on this number. So I called him on his cell phone. I got him in church and got him in a lot of trouble.
Uh-oh.
But he called me back afterwards, and I asked him if I could come over and meet him and take his photograph, and he said yes. I went over to his house across the river in Algiers. He was totally warm and totally wonderful. Man with so many stories from the music business. He was just absolutely charming, and no regrets and not a sour note on anything in his life. A wonderful, wonderful man, and still with us, and he's actually on the TV show Treme.
Yeah, he definitely, and what a great tribute, because as we know, so many of our icons are, that we're familiar with in our growing up, are passing. Hopefully not in this case in any time near future, but what a great way to document those icons. And of course the music will live on forever, and we all have samples of that. But sometimes it's nice to know and to remember back what that songstress or songster look like, because they've all got their own personality, and it's nice to have it. So what better way than giving tribute to one of New Orleans legends than to have a great photograph. Once again, it's a horizontal done with a similar mat, and I think it's perfect to do a photograph of something like this with just the basics. This is one where some of the others I would maybe change around the framing and the matting, but I think this is just so typical and so perfect to do a musician's photograph with the white mat and the black frame. So if you were a fan of Frogman Henry, like I was telling Charlie, when we grew up, for New Year's Eve uptown, relatives had a big old basement, 3-story home, and they would have always a New Year's Eve party, and we'd stop in, and invariably all the local artists would be on that radio, or probably on the stereo on the 45s, and he would be the most prolific. So he would be all night long from midnight to the wee hours of the morning that we would try and sneak up if we were young and stay up and listen to. So I think we all recognize him. It's good to give him tribute. So we're glad you honored him. Now let's go on and see what else we got. So we're really getting specific to New Orleans with an identifiable hero as Clarence Frogman Henry. So what do we have next? Let's see.
This is one of my absolute favorite Southern Louisiana artists, Sonny Landreth. He is an amazing slide guitar player, songwriter, singer, arranger. He's very well known around the world, probably more well known in Europe than he is even in the United States. He's a tremendous slide guitar player. We got to see him across the river not too long ago, and we got some wonderful photographs of him. We got to meet him after the show. His band was something like I've never seen. His bass player was like a thunderstorm. His drummer was like artillery with submachine guns. An amazing, amazing performance, and he just looked good. I mean, he photographed well. You know, it's very hard to take a bad photograph in New Orleans. You really have to go out of your way to do it. One of the things you'll notice on some of these photographs I take, like this one, is there's vignetting around the edges.
Good. We talked about this earlier, and it's something I didn't even pay attention to until you pointed it out. And why don't you go ahead and explain that to the folks? It might not be as visible here. I was hoping you'd do it at one of the ones where there's less black background, so it would show up more significantly, and maybe we'll re-emphasize it on another picture. But go ahead and, since we started, let's go ahead and tell the folks here that particular process that you're doing.
Sure. Vignetting, when you see a wider shot of this, you'll notice that the picture is not perfectly square or rectangular. It's rounded at the edges. You can see it there. That's a pretty good representation. This is a reproduction of what your eye sees. Our eyes do not see rectangles. They do not see squares. They see circular. And so I try to reproduce that with my lens.
And as I said, we'll see on another one later on a brighter shot where it really is much more significant. So it's certainly not a deterrent. We don't want, but it is interesting because I thought it was more to replicate the circular of the lens, but it's the lens of your eye. It's the same thing, whether it's the mechanical eye of the camera versus your natural eye on your face. But an interesting concept. Here I like it. I'm not familiar with the artist. I told him I had to beg. It's not one of my ones I immediately recognized. I liked it strictly because of the simplicity of the black, of the coloring, the black, the red, and the white, which, you know, again, a lot of that is common in these any kind of musical concert where they'll have strictly the black and the white with maybe one color or sometimes multiple colors. But I think it just really has a beautiful depth and color description. So if you know the artist, that just adds the importance to the picture.
Yeah, Sonny Landreth is really a phenomenon. If you ever get a chance to see this man and his band, go. If you get a chance to get any of his CDs, you will not be disappointed.
Okay, well, wouldn't it be nice if we could tie it in and say he's at the Jazz Fest, but I really don't know if he is. And I would think that he might not be, but I really don't know. So check it, Sonny Landreth, Landruff?
Landreth.
E-T-H.
Yeah, Landreth, yeah.
Sorry about that spelling. Okay, if you'd like to hear him, like maybe you get on YouTube to hear it to see if you like. All right, let's move on to another picture, and we're going to see what we have lined up next, because in a little bit we're going to be coming to another icon of New Orleans that we have several photos of. Let's see what we got coming up next. What do we have?
Well, this is inside a bar in the French Quarter.
So we're staying in kind of the musical theme.
We're staying here in New Orleans. This is a popular bar that my wife and I like to go to. I liked the lighting that day because there was very dramatic contrast, and you could see the rays of light coming in through the window, and it really caught the atmosphere of the smokiness and the darkness of these people relaxing at their local neighborhood bar.
I totally agree. I think of our watering holes. I think this is a significant representation of and not that you couldn't find similar looking establishments throughout the U.S. or anywhere, but this is just so important to me as a typical look of a bar, regardless of being New Orleans, but certainly New Orleanians can recognize this particular situation. And I think it's interesting to capture the customers without making them, even though they are almost the center of the picture, they're not the same focus of the picture. So it's not like you were just zeroing in these magnificent looking creatures or whichever way you want to express it. It's the whole ambiance, whether it's from the beers to the, like I said, the wonderful architecture of the building, to the all the condiments, to the people themselves. So all of it go together to make a very interesting subject. It's not only the center subject being what's capturing his eye or what's capturing the importance of this film. And again, the subtle shadows of the interiors, just like we've seen in some of the other things, I think it's great. To me, it's almost reminiscent of black and white, even though it's not black and white per se. There is color here. So it has that. And I hate to say it, I prefer black and white from drama standpoint. Not necessarily in every photograph, but I think black and white really brings up the drama in situations. And that's what I'm seeing in several of these now. It makes the whole picture much more formidable, in my opinion, than just the central topic or the central individuals in the center of the photo. Anything else you want to say on it?
Well, I have to agree with everything you pointed out. You know, I like black and white too.
I love to hear that. Most people don't. Go ahead.
I like black and white, but you know, a lot of the stuff that I've shot is in sepia.
Sepia, which, let's tell the folks, remember this is Art 101. I love sepia, but let's tell people, if you haven't heard that term or you don't know what it means in art, go ahead and tell them what that is, please.
If you look at old photographs from the Civil War and that era, they're more of a yellow and brown.
An amber or brownish tint.
Exactly.
Right.
And
it's a natural weathering. Go ahead.
It's natural weathering, but it's a certain ambience that it creates. And all the photographs that I have down at New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park are shot in sepia.
There you go. So what he can do is recreate or make something look like it's older than it is. And not that we want everything to look like an antique, because obviously this is a contemporary photo here. But again, when you add some of these techniques to some of the photos, it just adds a whole new dimension. And like I say, some people say, oh my God, I don't want to look at all of those photos. They're all brown. Who wants to see that? Can't they restore them? Can't we get them copied? I said, what? I've had people say, can we take it to the place now? They can rejuvenate and copy and put color in it.
Give it to Ted Turner.
And I said, good, yeah. Thanks to Ted Turner, we have that magnificent. But I like it exactly the way it is.
I agree.
So I guess it's all in the eye of the beholder and the beauty of the subject. Mm-hmm. All right, but this is a great one. I think this is a great, because again, we're continuing in the New Orleans team without necessarily identifying it as true New Orleans only.
This is called Barflies.
Bar always got a title on this one, Barflies. Perfect name, folks. Hopefully you don't take offense to that, and you certainly, I'm sure, know what we mean when we talk about barflies. All right, let's move on and see where we're going next in our exploit of the city. Let's see, we got to move our camera around, so it's going to take a few seconds. Bear with us, folks. For those who are just tuning in, we have Charlie Oliphant on. He's a photographer. He's been with us since, I think he said 2004. Well, he came first, and then after Katrina, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, we came shortly before Katrina, and then
visited, and then decided to take up base after Katrina. So he's been doing the photography in our local community, representing what he sees, and he's been doing that around the world. So if you want to see something beyond, in his travels beyond New Orleans, I'm sure that he will have in his portfolio, if not in the website that we gave you, some samples of that, because maybe there's a particular city throughout this country you'd like to see something about and see his take on it. So don't hesitate to meet him at one of these situations, especially at the French Quarter Gallery situation. I know he should be there with some frequency. Or contact him through his website. But let's go on and take a look and see what we're going to have next, see where we're moving to in New Orleans.
Well, here we are in New Orleans at the Royal Sonesta Hotel.
Magnificent hotel. It's undergoing a lot of renovations since post-Katrina. Now it's zeroing in on this new restaurant for our restaurant customers. For those who are not familiar, we call Restaurant Revolution. That's going to be opening up pretty soon, we hope. But let's talk about this look. It's really neat.
Well, we had gone down to the battle between Kermit Ruffins and Irvin Mayfield, the two trumpet players. Every year they have the love sessions to raise money for charity. And we had been invited up to Kermit Ruffin's suite. in the hotel before the show. And so we went up and met his family, had wonderful food, and made many new friends. And I stepped around the corner on his balcony, and I saw this, and I just picked up the camera immediately, and I said, wow, this is pretty iconic New Orleans.
100%. And the thing that, to me, elevates this, I mean, everyone who probably comes to the city with a camera or a cell phone now takes some picture of a balcony, either with their friends on it or some other, or the neighbor, or someone on it, someone that. So you get a look at what really elevates and dramatizes this painting, this photo to me, is the opposite, the lack of having people cluttering, or even an individual on the balcony. I think it brings it to such a magnificent state, of a pristine state, whereas we're so used to seeing people up there somewhere in different viewpoints that we dismiss it. We really do. We dismiss the balcony. We look, not necessarily we focus on a particular individual, but we do. We focus more on the individuals that are on there collectively, if not individually, than the structure. So the whole architecture is lost in the personification or the customization of the photograph.
That's so true.
And this is like what I had to do for the restaurants. I have to go take pictures when the restaurants, I just wish I was a photographer like this gentleman, because I had to take the pictures of the restaurant when no one's there. Otherwise I had to get release of every Tom, Dick, and Harry future celebrity. So it has that same it's eerie to me, because, I hate to bring to you all in restaurants, it always looks like a restaurant that's empty. Well, don't they do any business? But that's just a requirement of the job. But here, and I don't think he didn't determine from his explanation, he was just here at the timing of the situation and wanted to get this wonderful view up close of a New Orleans architectural style that is so magnificent and so distinctive and so identifiable in New Orleans. But fortunately, it was either too early in the day or the evening, whatever, for people to be venturing out and cluttering it, excuse my term, with their individuality. So I really like this picture. I think it's really a testimony to our architecture.
Thank you.
And go ahead and tell us something else, because I know I'm long-winded on it. I apologize.
Well, like I said earlier, it's very hard to take a bad picture in New Orleans. I mean, you really have to go out of your way. Anything that makes you stop and look is probably a good subject for a photograph. And you get that around every corner in New Orleans.
Well, that's a fascinating testimony to our city, because and I know you're seeing it through a trained eye, but you're, I think, 100% correct, is that we have so much intrigue, and whether it's architecture, whether it's music, whether it's food, whether it's the people themselves or the activity going on, we have, and not that any other city doesn't, but for some reason, I guess because of our size and our concentration, because we were a small city and grew and then now have come back to our basic borders, if you want to call it. And in that concentration is so much of our history and our culture, and reflective of an unusual part of the United States. Now, I'll use that term, I think, in a positive way. Someone else might take it negatively. So we're really pleased he made that statement. I think it's really true. We might not all do justice as he has to our city and pictures, but at least we know that we're trying, and we've got something to keep and cherish for the rest of our time. All right, let's see what else we got, because we're doing a lot of variety here, and soon we're going to start, like I said, getting a little more thematic. And here it is. I talked about an icon that's been around for years, but has really become one of the most prominent symbols of our city in the last, let's say, 10 years, since Katrina. Maybe brought about because of Katrina's devastation, but more so because of now the true education, revelation on a wonderful TV program that we have called Treme, that has just been so successful, to really introduce something that in my day and time certain population would avoid this subject matter at all time for just ridiculous reasons. that now they've gotten to not necessarily a deification process, but certainly a celebrating of a true art. We have living, movable art in our streets during the Mardi Gras time and several other times during the city, St. Joseph's Day, Super Sunday, and we're finally giving it the recognition it deserves. Not in the isolated little pockets that it starts from and moves out of, but throughout the city and throughout the nation and the world. We have more people now that identify with New Orleans as, for the most part, the home of the Mardi Gras Indians than probably any other Indian culture in the world right now. So why don't we go ahead, because you've done several here that you brought of these folk, and let's speak about their labors and what the results are.
When we moved here, somebody gave me a great sentence. New Orleans is an embarrassment of riches. I think it's so true.
Very nice.
These people are living art. This detail, the paintings, are all done with individual glass bead. This is beadwork. This is an intense artistic process that probably doesn't exist anywhere else in the world anymore. This is passed down by Native Americans to these people. In the 1800s, the more fortunate slaves that escaped to the north were adopted by Native American tribes, which is where they learned a lot of the Indian lore, including the beadwork. And this is continued to this day through this wonderful art through the Mardi Gras Indians, in particular the Creole Wild West Mardi Gras Indians. These were the first Indians to do the Wild West shows with Buffalo Bill. They continue to this day. All that individual beadwork is intense. All these people do is they go to work, they do their jobs, they come home and they sew. And that's all they do. And then when they get them done, they go out and they parade themselves so we can all enjoy it and have this feasty eyes. I mean, it's so beautiful living here to see this living art come walking down the street. Shortly after we moved here, I was invited by the Creole Wild West Mardi Gras Indians to come down and photograph them, which is an unusual invitation, which I quickly jumped on and was very thrilled to get hundreds of wonderful images of their beauty, and they're just spectacular.
I totally agree, and what's interesting, like saying, the level, the labor that goes behind it is maybe pictured a little bit in the TV show of which we spoke, but nowhere is identified the magnitude of that labor and the propensity, the time that's involved. We're talking about, for the most part, the entire year before they're enabled to wear it again, the new version or the new costume. But to look at this one, where you're not only replicating symbols or animals, but actually human beings, the detail that you can construct faces and all out of beadwork is just phenomenal. So it's like his art of a photograph, but done in beadwork. So that's taking it another level. Now we're discrediting what he's doing, because he's bringing the vivid colors. I mentioned to him before we talked, we were fortunate to have on a couple of months ago a local native artist, Kenneth Scott, I believe is his name, who his artwork is predominantly a result of the Indians here in the city, in a particular tribe. And he did it in acrylics, if I remember. But again, he also had a dark tone. There was a lot of darkness in it. And then, so even with these magnificent, vibrant colors, it never shone to the gloriousness that is being brought out to the true photograph. But that's what he wanted. It's not like he couldn't do it. He had his reasons, if you saw the show, and his explanation. And I would love to get these two artists together. That's what I told him. I'm going to give their emails. I'm going to tell them I want him to see his work. Maybe give him a copy of my DVD for that thing, and vice versa. And I know he exhibits at several of the art markets. And let him come to see two different approaches to similar subjects that still can coexist and still expand the glorification of this wonderful art that's so unique to our city. Anything else you want to say about it? Well, is this piece any different size than the others?
No, these are all pretty much the same. Most of my stuff is 20 by 24. Okay.
And again, just typical white frame. Nothing to take away from the gloriousness of the photograph subject itself. Exactly. All right, very pretty. All right, let's move on now. We've got, I think, two more of these magnificent Indians for you, but Wow, wait till you see the vibrosity of some of the colors coming up. I probably made that word up. Let's see if we got it. Here's one. Oh my goodness, check this out, folks. Have you ever seen blue this blue? And tell us what you know about this particular subject, please, Charlie.
Well, taking these photos that day was rapid fire. There were literally hundreds of Mardi Gras Indians out that day. And they were going on an amazing walk, and you really had to run fast to get ahead of them so you get the next picture. When I saw this guy's blue, I don't think I'd ever seen anything like it before. And then his face and his expression, he was just so proud, and he was still humble at the same time. And I think you can see that in his face, that he's happy, but he's just who he is, and nothing more, nothing less. But then the face paint that goes along with it, with the beads and the feathers and all the sewing. It's just unbelievable. These people blow my mind every time I see them. And every year it's a different outfit.
Yes, and what I love here is the ascending shades of blue. So it's not just one shade. I mean, that's enough with all these plumage. I assume they have to dye these things. I don't think they come. I mean, I don't know. That's how little I know about it. Someone had to dye it at some point. But to show the different shades, starting the darker shades at his lower part, at his midsection, working up to the light, the full beautiful light blue, almost a sky blue, or even more magnificent. And then the interesting part, to take some blue colorization and to actually adorn his face. It's just his lips, not a war mask or anything like that. Just to complement, to continue the color to his own face. If I'm seeing it correctly, it's just a great, great idea to again blend the art, the person with the art itself, as opposed to the person wearing the art.
It's art on art on art. And you're going to see this again in the subsequent photos that you'll put up. You'll see the face painting that goes along with the outfits, and it really accents, and it's unbelievable. Before I'd come here, I'd never seen anything like this in my life ever.
Yeah, I totally agree. We talk about it, like I said, for years we've talked about it, just really haphazardly. Never featured it as so much as it's become so important post-Katrina as a true representation of our culture. Because when people were pulling us down and saying, why should you be rebuilt? Here's a perfect reason, if nothing else,
Amen.
to use only this as if we needed only one excuse
Here you go.
to keep something like this alive for the history that we've built. It's certainly worth rebuilding that city. But I'm saying it's just one element of the magnificent culture that we have. And before, taken for granted, now revealed to the world. Okay, now let's go on. I think we have one more in wall. You think we knocked you out with blue. Wait till you see the next color. I mean, it's going to be vibrant upon vibrant. Let's see if we can get it. There we go.
Yeah, here's again what I'm talking about with the face paint accenting and contrasting with the outfits themselves. This guy was just absolutely spectacular. Again, his beadwork is just amazing. And again, you talk about the different shades of green that he's got there. He's got like 4 different shades going on. And it's just dumbfounding when you see them. I'm just dumbfounded right now when I'm looking at them again, even though I took the picture and I've seen it several times. Yeah, have you ever seen anything like this in your life? Not if you haven't lived in New Orleans, you haven't.
What's so amazing, the first thing that came to me, even though it has no relevance at all, is that these are the colors, especially with the red cross on his forehead. This is what the emergency EMS people should be wearing. Not necessarily not so much the plumage, but these colors. Because these are so vibrant, whether they're in the middle of the day or the middle of the night, they're out in the street. This can be visible for years. This could be the universal EMS emergency symbol. To take these 3 colors, put that red cross on it, and use these vibrancies of this day glow colors. Like I say, there would be no need for light. Everyone, just think of that magnificent troops of all of our people in these, whether it's just a vest or whatever, in that magnificent colors in that red cross. It would be a living testimony. It would just be so fabulous. I'm creating things here out of nonsense, but that's what immediately came to me. These should be the colors for the Red Cross emergency worker.
I agree. I agree.
I knew you would, but I'm sure most of our audience think I'm half lunatic here. But anyway, it is really and when you see this in person, again, I know we do our best here at the station to bring this to you. But I have to ask, is this particular, or these last 3 on your website again?
Yes.
Okay, well, folks, don't forget it. Oliphant, Oliphan't, Images, IMAGES, one word.com. Check these out, and do you have more than this on the Indians?
Oh, yes.
Okay, there you go. So he mentioned there were like 4 galleries.
Correct,
So it'd be great if they had a whole gallery for these, because I'm sure there are other colors as significant or almost as significant as this. But to me, this is the epitome of the vibrancy of the work, the color that these people are able to bring out to our fine city when they're truly adorned and emblazoned.
Amen.
Okay. Again, we're talking to Charlie Oliphant, transplant to our city post-Katrina. Exhibits in the French Quarter, the gallery. I just told you, in the open-air gallery behind the French Market, and also on the website. Right now, he hasn't been using some of the art markets that some of our people do, but hopefully in the future he will. But you can contact him certainly through the website to find out anything more about where you can see the work in person, because even though he was kind enough not to mention, he also exhibits in several different cafes and restaurants, small coffee shops, I guess, throughout the city. As you know, those entities have become additional virtual galleries for our artists, which is great. So people who may not have enough to do a whole series or a whole showing can exhibit 1, 2, 3 pieces and spread throughout the city, so at places that are super populated because of the food requirements that we have and desire. So you might come across some of the work there, and don't hesitate to ask the proprietor about it if you're not able to identify, just to see if it's any of Charlie's work. Okay, let's go ahead and see what else. I think that's all we have of the Indians.
Actually, we do have one left.
Oh, we do have one more?
Yeah, well,
I forgot.
This was early on in the day with one of the young Indians getting into their outfit for the day. I believe this child is about 5 or 6 years old. And what was really neat was how much the color stood out when you looked at her, and it seemed like she was the only thing that was in color when you looked at her. So I kind of uplifted that effect by making the background black and white and just keeping the Indian child as the color in the picture. And we call this picture A Little Help, and I'm very proud of it.
I'm sorry, say it again?
Yeah, this picture is called A Little Help. She's getting helped into her outfit.
Oh, A Little Help. I'm sorry. Isn't that great? And this is what's wonderful about the tradition, is that it is being passed on. And, so many of our artisans who, whether it's building furniture or something that was all done by hand in our early days, have now been originally lost to machinery, and then lost altogether since we've closed most of our manufacturing down. So we can't even replicate multiple copies of such. Well, here's something where the true art is being passed on. And it's just like the restaurateurs, hopefully that one of their children will follow in their perspective and want that. But it's like with any business. After a while, sometimes the family want nothing to do. They had enough of that particular business.
Right.
So what's good is the community is still, because of the emphasis, I think, today, since Katrina, that we are seeing more and more of the additional family members, whether it's a female or child, also expanding that tribe, that Indian tribe, to continue the tradition. Because again, just the amount of the labor intensity to do this is so Herculean that anybody might reject it from just that physical labor. How much time of their life is spent doing that as opposed to enjoying themselves or something else. So,
and a lot of these, the Indians, and particularly in the Creole Wild West Mardi Gras Indians, are third and now fourth generation.
Well, yeah. Well, that's what's so remarkable, because we really needed to continue to express to the world that it is a living tradition. And no matter how many times or how many of these costumes you see, they're always unique and individual. They might have some color combination you remember from another suit, but the beadwork or the subject matter or the face paint's going to be different. So everyone is in. And when you think it's not something that lasts forever, because after 1 year, unless the owner is able to hold it. We don't even have a museum for this. I think we tried. There's some small scale version, which is something, but just like with our real Mardi Gras, we have one, used to be two, now only one museum, the State Museum, but it has just a microscopic amount of material representing the carnival. Same thing here. This should be, a huge project, a continuing project of a museum to constantly keep displaying, as opposed to returning these costumes to dust. If they keep them, hallelujah, but at least to continue displaying those magnificence as we continue through history. So this is great to see. We've got some young person there carrying on and moving on with his father and or mother in the Indian tradition. All right, so now I think we've finished the Indians. Not that we have to, but we'll go back to, I think we have another architectural subject before we move back to nature. We started with nature, we're animal and nature, and we're going to finish on nature. But let's take a look at, I think, one of the, we might have two. Yeah, this is not necessarily New Orleans. This is not New Orleans, really, not necessarily. This is a magnificent replication of a wonderful antebellum home in New Iberia where the gentleman lived. And for those who don't remember, my mother's family is from there, so I recognize it right away. It's called Shadows on the Teche. And this home is right on the bayou. And it has really two facades. And I asked him, this is what I think is the reverse facade, if I'm correct.
It is.
I might be wrong.
No, you are correct.
Whereas the street facade, which is the one that every painter almost, whoever does it, does the premium street facade. One, because I guess they can't, I don't know if they can go into grounds now or not, or they can't get around to the outside. So that's what's so neat about this. It's the same structure, and it's just as magnificent on the reverse as the front, although it's totally different. Because the front has more, if I remember, shutters, has maybe some awnings or screenery, so it is definitely a different. Tell us anything about how long ago was this that you took this one, please?
This was a couple of years ago. My wife and I like to go on culinary vacations. We like to go on a vacation in search of good food. So naturally, we end up in New Iberia. In particular, we like to go to New Iberia because there's a number of great businesses there, small storefronts that have wonderful food. Some of the famous restaurants up there. The food in New Orleans is wonderful. The food in New Iberia is heavenly. It is a whole nother world of richness and flavor, and it's a whole nother world is all I can say. It's wonderful. So we went on our first culinary vacation to New Iberia. This is Shadows on the Teche, the famous mansion, and it was across the street from the bed and breakfast we were staying at, so I didn't have to go too far to take a good picture. And I think the rest of the photographs we'll be looking at today will all be up in the New Iberia area.
Great. Well, that's what's great about this one is because, like I say, you're seeing the reverse side. So I would think 80% of this particular subject is from the front side. That doesn't make the rear any less important. That shows you how much significance was in those days to architecture. They didn't just put up a blank side on the back. It was just important on the side facing, even in some respects, more important, facing the bayou, since a lot of transportation was done by pirogue and by small boat, that more people probably saw that version of it than the site we see, because that would require horse-drawn carriages and streets and all that weren't even existed back in those days. So it's an interesting reverse situation you might want to think of and see it compared to the normal shot you see of Shadows on the Teche. Okay, now we're returning to nature, and he said, I guess these are all natural ones in New Iberia, but of course they could be anywhere. But the most important thing, again, all I can say about these are, one, the dimension, and also, again, the vibrancy. Just like we talked about the vibrancy of color on the Indians, now we're seeing it in its true natural form. So let's take a look at our first one, and I believe, and this was great. I guessed the name of this by accident, because I said you could not have individually, although it looks like place, those raindrops in such a linear fashion to get this grace. And I said, Bobby, or his wife said, you know what, Bob, that's the name of this, linear. So tell us about this wonderful bamboo leaf, which we see all around our city at all times, and just with a few raindrops, what it can do and enhance it.
Yeah, we're staying at the bed and breakfast again up in New Iberia. It's just rained. and we're sitting outside in the garden, and I notice the forms of these raindrops on this leaf, and I couldn't believe that they were lined up perfectly with all the lines, and so I called the photograph linear botany, and it's one of my favorites. I just love nature, and the composition that nature creates is better than I could have ever done myself.
And once again, the color, just having that stark black background with just really brings that vibrancy of the green. And it's almost a 3D picture without being 3D, because the water lobules, they look actually coming out of the photograph, and in the perfect shadow and black makes the green stand up like it's coming off of the photograph as well. So really well done. Well, I think we got a couple more, and we're running out of time, so we don't want to go ahead and cut you short. Let's go ahead and take a look at our next one. Another natural beauty.
Indeed.
Let's see if this is the one I'm thinking of. We talked about Clarence Frogman Henry. Well, we got another frog, not a frogman here. Let's talk about this beauty.
This is up on Jefferson Island, up in New Iberia again. We were walking the grounds, and I happened to look down at the plant, and then I saw the frog, and I said, "Oh my God!" And I grabbed the camera and got the picture as soon as I can. One of the things I like to emphasize in my photography is shallow depth of field, where the subject is in focus and everything else is slightly out of focus. And this picture almost took itself.
When I first saw it, of course, like I said, my eyes are bad, so I saw it from a distance like I'm seeing it now. I did not realize the frog was independent of the leaf. It looked like like a bud or something within the stem until I got close to it, and that's how meticulous this frog's colorization, his chameleon, to change to get perfectly identified. I mean, you'd have to really get up close to realize it's a frog, or he'd have to be blinking his eyes a lot for you to see that. So that's what's so perfect about this, is that the ability to have the exact color in nature living as well as in plant life living was just phenomenal.
He was definitely a chameleon. When he jumped out of the plant a little bit later, he churned the color of the ground that he was sitting on. So he's really quite spectacular.
So whatever you name this frog, this would be a great. You don't have to name him anything, huh?
I just call him Kermit.
Hermit. All right. Well, I don't think he deserves justice. I think you need to get him in there. But this, even if you don't name him, this is a magnificent piece, folks, because it's like a picture within a picture. You know, sometimes people do things hidden within. That's almost like what this is, but just naturally done. Okay, I think we have one more for Charlie Oliphant, and again, finishing up the nature scene with these great. And here the colors take it even beyond, because he's got that magnificent green. Well, go. You tell us about it, and then let me tell you about it. Oh, because we're running out of time.
Sure. This is Jefferson Island again, a blue dasher dragonfly on the pond. He just caught my attention. I was able to snap the picture fast enough, and came out real good, and I'm real happy with him.
Well, let's go on a little bit. I think we have a few seconds, but I don't mean for you to do injustice to your painting. So you've got, notice, folks, you see him there, blue, but there's also somewhere, maybe if I go around the camera a little bit more, isn't there's a magnificent yellow. So what was interesting about the other is that, we had green, there we go. We have really the makeup of the primary color. We have the blue in the background and on the insect itself, and then we have a tinge of yellow. I don't know whether it's the plant up into the. I think we're going to pan it. There you go. We're starting to see it on the left of the stem and all. So you have all three colors, the two colors that go up into making the green, and we've just got a fantastic vibrancy once again with that stark black, the white frame and the white matte and the black frame that really bring it out. So folks, any of these would be tremendous. We have to go. That's our music. Thank you, Charlie. We'll see you at the restaurants next week. Thanks very much. Thank you, Bob. Sorry we did. Me and Charlie.